Now it's on hold. Hello?
Good afternoon.
We have a loop.
It's on delay.
Just a little delay.
What's a loop?
So let me call him. See what
You
he
keep
is.
on repeating yourself.
Also known as buffer. Your buffer.
I'm not gonna deny anything.
Yeah, hi. Just checking, make sure you're coming, yeah?
Russell, what's going on?
We're waiting for you whenever you're ready.
All right, chair. How's by you?
Whenever you're ready. Okay.
How's it feeling for it?
Hi.
Herring? Oh, herring. Herring. Swim away. Combine on herring.
The speaker is.
It's a pretty speaker. Maybe
Maybe, you want to say something?
Moshe,
Maybe,
they give me some.
you want to say a few words? Opening word of bracha. By the way, today's Farbrengen is sponsored by the Eitzah Living Bill Shmai, Evish Benchim, Chof Av Farbrengen, and Ali and Yonim. Co-sponsored by Rabbi Rappaport in honor of his birthday. We wish him a Shnas Hatzlacha, Chole and Yonim.
Oh, הכל יהיה בגברו.
What is it? It's good to give out?
This is wir sagen ab da Wort. Okay, leider wir sagen ab Wort.
I'll share a small thought. This is everything. I heard that a friend of mine. I don't know where it says, but he said they never.
Speaker is here.
You say in little. Guys, we'll speak right now. So it says in Shlomo you should say l'chaim, not lachayim. If you say lachayim, you can imply to members for not life, the opposite of life. I think you should say l'chaim. But by Tfilas Hal, we say taka by there's another place where we say yes, we say l'chaim v'lamot. Because otherwise it sounds like a memory for l'chaim and not for not dead, which means something negative. Rebbe's father, and again, coming to Rebbe's father, I don't know where he says this. Maybe Mati knows exactly where it says it. But Rebbe's father explains about asking the Rebbe should remember us for l'chaim for life, and it should be life that's not just l'chaim that we're not dead. Not just we should be alive because you're not dead. We should be alive because we're alive. So l'chaim, we should be alive because we're alive.
Fine.
Mic is open. Anybody wants to grab it? Say God.
Mic drop. Literally.
Mic drop. This is our Chabad mic drop over here. Kosher mic drop. Er kommt. Aber sagt, das der Wahl soll ich kommen waren.
He wants Monkey to say a few words for us. Say a word for Levitt. That the Mishnah that we say, someone that are in the Mishnah is that if you have a needle and the needle becomes tameh, and you want to table the needle, so you put it on the step of the maida. The maida means like the mikvahs used to be in these caves, so it's private. You wave the water, you push the water, should go a little bit of water should go over the needle to make it hard. So there's a book from Rabbi, and one of the times that Rebbe wrote about it quite a few times. One of the times that Rebbe spoke about it was by a children's rally. Do you remember? Yeah.
I listened to the Sikha. I'm saying now.
So what happened actually was there was a Kinnah Shlomo in Eretz Yisrael. I forgot the name of the place. It's significant because the Rebbe mentioned it later. So the Kinnah Shlomo, and someone was around Chof Av time. So someone mentioned, I think of the Mendel Kutterfaus mentioned this word. He heard it from Rabbi live. He heard it.
Oh yeah.
And he mentioned this word, and then the Rebbe wanted Chazara from what happened by the Kinnos, by the next Farbrengen, and they spoke about it, and he explained it in a way that even children should be able to understand. So a few things that the Rebbe said was that a needle represents a yid, and a yid comes down into this world. What's the lashon over there? Beit HaMikdash, from Beit HaMikdash, that the neshama comes down into the big it, into the Beit HaBoyer. And the reason why we're put down into this world is to make a little bit tachtonim. But a yid, sometimes the needle could become tameh. What's that? A needle becomes tameh, but the function of a needle is that it pokes. It's a good thing when a needle could poke. But what's the idea of a poke? A poke is, if you want to connect two things, a lot of times you have to first break the barrier between the two things you have to poke. The problem is sometimes people poke, and they poke out of their own yeshes. They're not poking in a constructive, productive way. They're poking to crush somebody else. That's tameh. So the yid sometimes can become tameh, and sometimes they need the waves of life push a person around, and they tame the person. They crush the person a little bit to take away his yeshes. But a yid doesn't necessarily need that. A yid could take the water of mikvah, which is chassidus, made das ater, and could soften up their own ego with that. And by doing that, so the Rabbi says like this: the needle has two ends. The pointy end is meant to crush anything that obstructs the yid's avodah. That's the shtalt that a yid has, and then the other end is called the ear of the needle. So you put the thread through the other end of the needle. He calls it the ear. Yeah. Calls it the ear. And he says, what's pshat? The avodah is when a yid listens to what the Eibusher wants him to do in this world, and he could thread everything in this world. He could thread together. That's the function of the needle. You put it together, and you pull it. He explains with the kavachut. You could pull everything together because you can bring achdus of Hashem into this world. So the nakud is that a yid has these two balance. Never spoke about this a lot, because you see by the blade the balance of on one hand are stolz, a very, very big, pride in being a yid, and at the same time, not bulldozing other people, but in a very gentle way, bringing people together, bringing alikus into people's lives, into the world. So now Rabbi Kaplan could explain who was that was.
That's about Vamovus.
Weiß nicht, Rebbe gerät wegen einem Sachmo. Ich hab schon mal gesagt, dass in einer Arbeit so lange die Stimme da gibt, that it's Moku what they brought. Probably in an hour. Yeah, Rebbe. Each time was another addition. And the Kudders, Rebbe once asked years before this, but it's the same thing. I believe it's diary. One of the things he writes a beard al pi Kabbalah for why he's going through what he's going through. Unbelievable thing. But the beard starts off, Ani Levi Yitzchak. But everyone's, if I bring it, they ever ask, how does it come that someone with such a pitful to be should start off the whole thing with the word Ani? Ich. Because the question is wild. And his answer is the same idea that when someone is so buckled to the Abishan, then there is no I. So the whole I is just Abishan. So when he says Ani, it doesn't mean me as an independent me. Kind of.
Same city.
Besides for the Farbrengen Chof Av is Farbrengen because the yard site of Tzaddik, the Rebbe's father, but it's also Farbrengen is going to get to the Rabbeim's yard sites or birthday, so that's one type of Indian. Farbrengen Chof Av, the Rebbe's father, it's not a regular type of day and occasion Farbrengen. But the Iker Chassid, when we Farbrengen Chof Av, the Rebbe said I think the Rebbe wrote, the Rebbe said that it's a chayv ne'ima, or it's a pleasant bakasha that Chassidim should do the minhagim of Yartzeit. The Mishnah is to have a Farbrengen and to mention Divrei Tarasis. That's it's not the regular. There's a certain mile in Chof Av that it's a personal bakasha from the Rebbe that Chassidim should Farbrengen Chof Av and to mention Divrei Torah from Reb Leivik. So I'm not going to. The Divrei Torah of Leivik is already mentioned before. Maybe I'll just mention a little vert that the Rebbe speaks B'kasher with Chof Av that also has relevance a little bit. The only place in Gemara that's mentioned Chof Av is in Masechta Tainis. There's mentioned Be'esrim B'Av, because the beginning of Aysheri, so there's a tkufa that was in order to be Makav Karbanis in the Beis Hamikdash, so you have to person Mechuyev Karban Chatas, let's say. So he brings the animal, the one that's Mechuyev Karban Chatas brings the behemoth, and he's Makdash shit to bring it Agav Mizbeach. But there's you have to have wood. Or the carbon is not kosher unless there's the carbon is brought on top of wood. So you have to have wood. So there's a tkuf in the beginning of Aysheni, there was no wood. There was wood lacking in the Lishka Sa'etzim, the Beis Hamikdash. And at that tkuf, there were certain families that they volunteered to bring wood to the Beis Hamikdash. Usually in the Beis Hamikdash there was the Lishka, there was the special money, the kupa of the Beis Hamikdash, that they would buy wood with it. That time there was no money in the Lishka. And certain families donated wood to the Beis Hamikdash in order to facilitate that Karbanos should be able to be brought. They brought wood Agav Mizbeach, and that gave the possibility for Yidden to be Makav Karbanos. So the Chacham were Masakin, the Chacham of that time were Masakin, that even in the years to come, even if there's going to be a chef of wood in the later years, but still those families, those parents that were Makav Karbanos, so their families should always we should always use their wood. There's different positions that shouldn't know exactly what happened in the later years. But in general, the way the Pashas, the Mashmos of the Sugi is that at that time when their father brought wood the first time, when there was no wood, so their families, their descendants, their families should continue bringing wood at that time, even when there is a chef of wood in the Beis Hamikdash. And not only they continued that at that date of the year where their father brought wood the first time, so their families brought wood and the Beis Hamikdash only used their wood that day, but it was a special yomtiv for these families. They have a whole celebration of the Ganze Chagiga. That was the special takana that these families, that their parents then were menadev to bring wood. Because there was no wood, so it stayed l'deiris, a special yom miyuchat for this family, a personal yomtiv for this family. They would bring the wood that day, and they would make a celebration. And the Gemara goes through the names of the families. Each day, the different names. It was Tezvavav, which family brought, and what was the yomtiv. So it says Be'esrim Ba'av, B'nei Pachas Ben Yoyev. Gemara means which family brought the Karban Eitzim, Esrim Ba'av, a certain family, B'nei Pachas Ben Yoyev. Saying the name right, I remember now. I think it has been Yair. And the Gemara has a machlok. So that's so the Gemara. The Mishnah, the Gemara goes through the list of all the names of those that the families that brought wood, and say the name. This that's again a lot to know. If you come from this family, so that's a special chiyuv to celebrate that day. And just negate the takana was that you should bring the eitzim that day. So it's negate a lot to know which families on which dates brought the karbanis. But when they get to the family that brought the Esrim Ba'av, B'nei Pachas Ben Yoyev, so the Gemara has a machlekes, who are they descendants of? Not who was the father that brought. The father that brought, the Gemara knows who the father was. But who did this person stem? Where did he come from? What's the Gemara's anichis? One shitta is that he comes from the family of David HaMelech, from Ben David. And the other shitta is that he comes from the family of Yoyev Ben Tzruya. That's two shittas in the Gemara. So the Rebbe says that we have a klal, that anytime there's machlekes in Gemara, so either velo divra lekim chayim. It can't be that one there's chas v'shalom to say that one opinion in the Gemara is a mistake, they miscalculated or they miss a simple mistake, and one opinion is the truth. Either velo divra lekim chayim. Every word that's mentioned in the Gemara is chachmas shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's dvar Hashem divrei. It's actually speaking Chof Av. There's a letter that Rabbi Levi writes to the Rebbe, a very strong letter where he brings out in a very explicit way, in a very mamchish, very strong, every line that's mentioned in the Gemara, every line that's mentioned that Dele Rishonim, how was Dvar Havaya Mamish. He says the Eibusher himself, Havaya Mamish Omar, this Meimra. The Eibusher himself said the Meimra of Rashi, and he himself said that the Rashi said is a joke. He says, the Gemara says sometimes that with this Tana says, it's there's nothing to pay attention. B'dusahi, there's nothing to pay attention to this Svar. It's so the Eibusher himself said the Svar. He himself said that it's a joke on the Svar that he, on his Svara, And he himself, so that's has his mamchash very strong. This but upon every word in the Gemara is the Eibusher himself, the Divrei Lekim Chaim, is the Eibusher speaking. So the Eibusher doesn't miscalculate. There's no mistakes. So okay, this Shaila, whether this person, this family comes from David Melech Yoav, or the descendant of David, or from Yoav, it's machlekes v'mtzias. We have a call that there can't be a machlekes v'mtzias because since the rule is that Divrei Lekim Chaim, every word in Torah that's brought in Chachmi Yisrael is emes, it's Torah. So it can't be a machlekes where the base of the machlekes is there was partially the miscalculation that someone's partially mistaking basic facts. So what's the machlekes? The Rebbe said machlekes is not where the kula amma they came from one side they came from David, from the other side they came from Yoav. From the mother's side, from the father's side, they came from both of them. That wasn't the shaila. I mean, factually speaking, in Messias, they came from both of the shaila is which side was the one that brought them to do this great schus of bringing the carbon eitzim chafa. That's the shaila. Yeah, person has many sides. Which person has a good trait? So the mother wants to see that it comes from her side, his side. Everybody's which side does it come from? Who does the child look like? This side, that side. So the shaila is this is a great virtue, a great ma'ila to bring the carbon eitzim chafav. This family, this father, which brought the carbon eitzim chafav, he did it made the kazach. Like all other families which brought carbonas in other days, the Gemara doesn't try to go through from Van and Kumenze. Where did they from Van Stamp? Who are their parents? Where did they come from? This family that this father brought carbon eitzim, he brought the wood in Mikdash. Chof Av, the Gemara is saying, "Wann it kommt to say that Zam is such a nediva salev to bring carbon eitzim Chof Av, there must have some special background. It can't just come from a regular simple donation. It must be that he has a certain. Where does it come from? That the Gemara machlekes whether it comes from David, whether it's David's devotion to the Eibishter, or it's Yoav, which you have to understand that was machlekes. But that's so. The question is, but what's so special about bringing carbon eitzim Chof Av? That dafka the this family, the Gemara is looking to verify from Van and Kumtis that they had such a great schus to bring the carbon eitzim chafav. There was people that had eitzim then at that kufah. The Smithers didn't have eitzim. There was a machzor of eitzim chaner. Just some families had, and they donated. They gave a donation. A donation is a donation. Why is it that this parent that brought chafav? The Gemara has a whole shaklatari. Where does this family come? What's the great virtue of bringing chafav? So there's a couple of points that the Rebbe brings out. B'chlal, what's the mile of bringing carbon? I'm just going to go through because I think these are pratim which are negeya. So one verse is b'chlal. Why is it many donations were brought to the Beis Hamikdash? The whole building of the Beis Hamikdash was brought through donations. I mean, that's Yidden which contributed kesef, like by the Mishkan, kesef, zav, avonim. Everything was brought. The whole building of the Beis Hamikdash came from the Davis from Maman Atziba, from Klal Yisrael. We don't find that the Yid that brought oil for, let's say, donated oil once for the menorah, so his family should have a schila deiris to celebrate the day that he brought oil. What was so special about those that brought the eitzin, that caused that their descendants la'adul el meilam l'deiris have a special mitzvah to be celebrated that day, and it's a whole special thing. What's the great matter being carbon eitzin? There's one word that Rebbe says a word like this: a person is. At the time there was a lackage of wood. There wasn't an abundance of wood in Eretz Yisrael. And wood is a need that a person has. People have a need for wood. A person has to warm their home. It wasn't standard giving some extras that they have. Wood is a needy thing, a useful thing that a person needs, and especially in a time where there's a lack of wood. There was a machzor of eitzim. That's one thing. Then even if there's could be many other materials that not everybody has, and a person gives donations, that's a ma'ila. Here, there's a special thing that a person is ready to devote himself, to dedicate himself, and to do an act of self-sacrifice, to give away something of himself, but for the sake of being a part of something very big, something greater, a big thing. Someone's giving away something to the Beis Hamikdash. It's a massive need to build the Beis Hamikdash, to have a Shas Shechina and also that's a meridik mitzvah. To build the Beis Hamikdash, and there should be a bias, which the whole Klal Yisrael will be able to be makar karbanis in that bias, and to be aliyah shalish regalim. This is a universal endeavor. To do such a great universal thing, a person is ready to give anything away in order for the Beis Hamikdash to be built. We'll have a stone of the Beis Hamikdash, maybe we'll have his name engraved. Everybody's ready to do that. But to bring wood, the wood is a one-time thing. The wood burns every day. There's wood that's brought in the Beis Hamikdash. It burns the Beis Hamikdash to get weiter. The wood doesn't become a permanent part of the Beis Hamikdash. Number one. Number two, it's not negaya for the building itself or Klal Yisrael to have the wood. There's a certain year for a year that has to bring a carbon. For those years that have to bring a carbon, chatos, or the most chiyuvim of bringing carbonas in Beis Hamikdash, the Ray wasn't bringing a carbon taida on a nest that the Eibishter did. A nest is not something which is ein bal nest makabernis. There's nisim tmidium, but in similar the way the Eibishter there cloud, the way the world runs is that it's seemingly according to chukei teva. The Ray of carbonas which are brought, the year that ein bisschen Chas V'Shalom gesindigt, beschägig, Korban Chatas, these type of things. That was the Korbanos Pratim. So the need for wood is for private people, need for private Yidden, which they not necessarily did. The reason why they're bringing a carbon is for the sake of. So mainly, if you're bringing a carbon itself, bringing a carbon to the Semidish, you're bringing a carbon to the Eibush. You're being makers. There's self-sacrifice, but you see the te'elis of what you're doing. You're bringing a carbon, it's going to go up to the Eibush. Bringing wood, the wood itself is nothing. The wood itself doesn't become a carbon. The wood is just what gives the possibility that you'll be able to make a carbon on the wood. But bringing the wood itself, there's no. You're not going to get. There's nothing great that's going to happen from it. That's just an emtzai in order to make a carbon. No one's going to pay attention to the wood that's brought. Because the main thing is that the carbon should be brought, the carbon that has to be brought. The wood is just the ma'af should be able to be makar carbon. So the habit is a person to give away from himself, to mevater himself for a cause, for something which is not it's not the universal thing. It's not a great thing. It doesn't seem to the person's eye that it's some major. It's going to make major change in the world. And another thing is no one's going to. It's not a noticeable thing. The carbon which is brought, that's the main purpose. That's the noticeable thing. The wood that you're going to put on the mizbeach, and on that you're going to bring the carbon, that's an unnoticeable. That's a different type of mesiras nefesh. And a yid that's ready to mevater for himself for such a cause, that shows on a real pure dedication to the Eibush, a real pure dedication to what's needed, to what's needed, even though you might not necessarily get any gain. Not a gash mistake, not a ruchnis to get gain either. So that's why for this type of hakrava, this type of donation. They made a yom tov l'deiros that the children of this family should always remember the type of mesiras nefesh and this type of keshet halukus that their parents had. This is the type of iber gebrek, the type of service of the Eibush, which is not a regular thing. It's not visible on a regular day. Shachris mincha ma'ariv that a person does avodas Hashem. This was a special devotion to a mitzvah, a special devotion to a yid without any apparent gain. Without any apparent physical gain, an apparent major cause that you're contributing to, and this type of thing brings out a certain purity in avodas Hashem, certain purity in devotion to the Eibishter, that their children have to always remember and always keep in mind this purity, this dveikus, and this iber gamakai to the Eibishter, this bittul, without any expecting any major return. So that this is before we get to Chava. This is just an important point that's that every person could learn from it. There's you have a word that says in Pirkei Avos that Ezo Gibar Kevish Asitzre. People think a mighty person or a hero is someone that he's someone that could able to conquer cities, able to do major things. Mishnah says Ezo Gibar, someone that's Kevish Asitzre. But it brings Teiv Erech Hapayim. It's better someone that holds in his anger, holds in his temper. Teiv Erech Hapayim Begibar. Someone that he holds in his ruach, he holds in his anger, holds in his temper, than someone that conquers a city. The Pesukim don't say what the Mishnah says. Who is the mighty one, or who is the hero? Someone that controls his heart. The Pesukim don't say that. The Pasuk says, the right that the Mishnah brings is, the Pasuk says, it's better, a giver is someone that conquers cities, a strong person, but it's better to hold yourself in and not to get angry, to hold in your anger. It's better and it's better, Meishel Baruch is someone that controls his spirit is better than Leicheder. That's glad we have to understand what's the Mishnah saying. It doesn't necessarily mean a giber. There's one type of gvura a person is going to conquer a city. Leiched Ir is going to conquer a city. Everybody sees the greatness that he did. He dedicated himself and he sacrificed himself. He went at risk and he did something, a courageous act. But this courageous act that he did, we see the major results of this act. He did a major thing. He was leiched and Ir. That's one thing. Erech HaPayim, someone that holds in his anger, someone gets him a little, annoys him a little bit, and he wants to give him a little, he wants to, someone gives a little, you want to blur out a little bit. It's not, to hold yourself in, no one's going to notice it. It's not noticeable. No one's going to know about it. Only you and the Eibishter. Can't have it for them. L'chori didn't accomplish anything, it's great things. So that a person that's, the mission is saying a real hero, someone is putting the big energy and he's fighting and he's doing major things, and there's nothing major. It's not such a big act of gvura. It's not such a heroic act because it's natural. If you have such a big objective, you're going to go for full force in order to get that objective. But if the chiddush over here, the kunz is when you have something which is not necessarily this major, a major thing. The person's going to hold himself in from getting annoyed at someone else, or hold himself in from speaking lashon hara, Vedas Kalish Adam Dash Bakeva, small little things that openly, visibly to the way we look at it, it doesn't cause the Rashi says Mitzvah Adam Dash Bakeva. There's certain things that we don't visibly, it doesn't seem like it's unnoticeable. So an eitz on the mizbeach, no one's going to pay attention to the wood. There's a fire and there's a carbon. There's wood. No one's going to pay attention to the wood. For a person to devote energy and kayach and he's going to strain himself in order to hold himself in kleinigkeit, in small little details, small little things that might not be so noticeable, or everybody yad inish benafshi different dogmais for this. This is here. There's a certain purity in Avodas Hashem more than a person doing something or devoting himself to do something which you see openly the results. So that's b'chlal when you get the carbon eitzim before Chof Av. But b'chlal that's the idea of carbon eitzim in general is this level of the MS is the by Chof Av. You speak about the Beleivik. So in a way it's hard to, but b'chlal the Mr. Snevish in Russia and there's different sides of it. But you speak about the Beleivik himself. You speak about the Zmanim that Yidden were in Tfisa. Yidden were in jail. They had no hope. They had no. But that they're gonna, and the Yidden were medactic v'kalik v'chamura. They didn't expect. There was no. It's not like a person sitting say the paper in front of his family and is being mahader in order to he has in the back of his mind that his children should see how you're supposed to be mahader b'mitzvahs or other type of things. So you have a certain objective. You have a certain mevilabas uftan with the might be a little bit hard. You're training yourself for the children to see how a Yid is supposed to train himself. But a Yid sitting himself, the other Rabbi Tzachana writes in her Zechrenis that what she was when one of the regards that she got from a Beleivik in Tfisa was from I remember exactly, but a professor, a guy that was with him, Shoshana Yom Kippur, the guy that was with him in the room. But there's a gefirt that's nicht gechidish, a Beleivik by us. It's things like but b'chlal b'chsidim you had this level of a serious nefesh in that kufa that without there's something that we have to remember always. This serious nefesh in Russia has to be remembered because this idea that a Yid devoted himself and addicted to culture they were saved from and kalik v'chamura without expecting anything in return. Medactic in the Rebbetzin writes one of the things. This is but Lapel she writes this that after there was a zman when after he was in jail for a meshel zman and then she finally managed to meet him when he went to Golis in Chile. So he told her over different things that what his experiences while he was in jail and the tkufa that he was in jail. So one of the things he said was there was a certain tkufa that the bichlal all the time they give a certain amount of water for each prisoner to. So he said that he used half of the water or revius, whatever was needed for Til Saddam, used it from Til Saddam. The little water that was left, they didn't give an abundance. They didn't give you a whole 2-liter bottle of water to have for the day in case. They gave you exactly how much a person has to have in order to survive. There was nothing given over there for pleasure, and he used the portion of the water he used for that. He told the Derech Hagav. So that he said, but to get to that, he said, but to get until Saddam I was mistader because they gave water every day, so half of it I used for, or 2/3 of it, whatever it was, used until Saddam. But one of the things it says that there's a tkufa that he didn't have water. There's a certain shlav where the way it works is that the prisoners go from one prison to another prison. They would walk for 2-3 days. They had to walk the entire day. The guards would exchange every couple of hours, but the prisoners had to walk. It's not only him. That's because all the prisoners from Russia had such a minhag that there was a certain exchange of prisons, and they had to walk from one prison to the next. And at that you had to walk the entire time, and they didn't give water. So he said a couple of days that he didn't have water. She thought that he meant that he was thirst and the heat. He said he didn't have water for a couple of days, and then finally they went through a certain pond, water. He said, and he found it. He went by a pond, and he told her that I was able to can't wash Wasser. She was thinking the whole time that for sure he was a few days not water. But also a few days without water means a few days without water he couldn't wash. That's stuff from that. But the point is there's a certain type of mesiras nefesh that it's hard for us to be today. A person's around people and whatever a person does, there's a certain any role that a person is playing. A person is a parent, he wants to have an effect on his children. A person is part of the community, he wants to have a certain effect on the community that he's living. That's also a mile. That's a davar gadol also. That's not a question. But b'neisiv lezeh, there's a certain nekuda where a yid b'chadri chadarim in his little dal damis where a person holds himself in. He's a meishel berucha. He does a saklenik at a certain level of vitur, even though you don't necessarily see any visible major effects that are going to be caused, but you're doing it for the sake of the truth, for the sake of this is what has to be done. Even I feel even keiner zetnish. That's l'chaim.
Time to do shalom.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
As mentioned before, this mice with it, even though it's not a story that's really shaykh to regular people from a regular person. So when he's thirsty, that's what he feels, and he can't function until Sadaim. So you don't feel it's not as real to us. It's not as real to us like drinking. So I say what's I'm bechaded selling as a mice. It says that one of the inyanim of a molik, one of the things that said is that a person comes into his pilot. He says Mitzrayim or Kriyas Yam. So a person sees a psanes, a davar nifla, and he gets in the spala. As I'm start, he sees Yad Hashem. And then he has a different thought that comes and tells him, "What's your son the spala?" The Eibusher, of course, the Eibusher can do anything. What are you getting all excited about? We're not dealing with your Ingele was at the Katana Grace. We're talking about the Eibusher. What's the question? So that's a mother. Why is that a mother? It's the right time. It's true. What are you getting so excited? The Eibusher is a hardy and voice. All the psukim that we say in Psukim de Zimra. The Eibusher created He gives snow to the world and this. All this. What's the grace of matter? The Eibusher is the Almighty God. What's the big making a whole? But the shaila is why is it? The question is, what is the mechuvan of this time? If someone there's a nest that happens. A person is there's a spilus, a davar nifla happened. This thought that says, what are you getting so nistful? The Eibusher is what are you getting so excited that the Eibusher did such a big miracle? That's the Eibusher made. What's the big pella? What is he trying to say? That you should have a deeper akkad in the Eibusher is godless, or don't get excited. The reason why it's Amalek is because his main focus is not to tell you that what do you get? You're taking the Eibusher too small. He's really much greater than this. That's not his purpose. The purpose is that he wants to calm you down from your spells. Don't get too excited. Continue life. Don't get too carried away. The Eibusher, so he's using the fact that the Eibusher is great, not in order for you to bring you to connect you to that akkad, to have a deeper akkad and godless ability. He just wants to take you away from the spells that you're having. So that's Amalek. It's not so much the tiny that he's saying. It's more that the tiny is not in place. So a lot of times you hear different stories which were some reason they were many things that happened to the Levik in jail. Not all these stories were recorded, and this story happens that Rabbi Chana wrote this. We have stories that about tzaddikim and different types of things. There's always a tiny. We're dealing with tzaddikim, daily Israel. What's the pella? What are we getting so nispal from? Well, the question is what's behind this time? Is it calm down this pilus? It could have a aggressor hider until sedayim. That's not that's a nice thing. No one's convincing himself that on the Bleivik's level. So you have to know this idea that sometimes Takapers could get it in this spot and he could convince himself that he could be on that level. So then maybe it's kedai to remind yourself that there's a nishya that it can succumb to them. But a race learner from Sipurim of a tzaddik, that's a positive thing. This idea, a person himself, a dikta kasha devre sefer or a mitzvah, to our eyes sometimes it seems like it's davar shamabakach. I mean, this or that, it doesn't. So there's shesh chonach in of hidden mitzvahs. But the fact that every dikta kal, every mitzvah is a real thing that has real effect, learn about it, shtei but for have amchosh in it. See, you hear a story of a year that by him Natil Sadayim was more real to him than the need to drink. The fact that there's a tumah on the yadayim, and that person has to purify himself. I mean, we don't. That was more neget, and this tumas hanefesh that he had on the yadayim that was more negay and was more real, was more of a fact, more of a reality, more than the fact that it was Thursday. Thursday, the guf is a little, the physical body is a little is weak. That wasn't as real as the fact that there's a certain ruchnis dikatuma. That's a dogma. That's a person's charaytracht nabisol that leidavareko dikta kal, which is in Gemara, mitzvah, minhag, a din. These are things that are real. It's not only minhag avasei b'yadein. We don't ask questions, but every minhag and every din and everything has a real value and real. That's. I was saying before when you get to Esrim Ba'av, that just remind us of another thing that Tzachana writes in her Zechrenis. She's metired how her husband's here Shemayim. So one of the things she's metired over there is he was a rav of a city. Continuous was a chash of a city, so he used to sell the chametz at a Pesach Tagoy. So she's metired that the way the mechir. B'chlal, you weren't able to speak to him until after Chatzos. He was like someone's doing some major sale. He's selling a major property that day is for numeric. He wasn't able to focus on anything else. It was until he saw the chametz that was mamish a big thing sitting on his head. Which is matar how he would sit with a guy and explain the guy by the whole star of the mechira. Made sure the guy understand it. You sit with him for an hour and a half, 2 hours, explaining the guy the whole star, every kinyan. And she remembers hearing him from the other side of the room. She remembers him telling the guy that you understand that this and this and this happens, you become the legal owner and this and this. And the guy was trembling, was saying, yes, Rebbe, I understand. And like it was mamish. But he said after the chametz was sold, he used to come out of the room with he was relieved, like someone did this major sale that Baruch Hashem pulled through, and now he was able to get back to himself. He was relieved. That's what the Rebbe brings me to get to what's the Esrim Chof Av. Why is it that after when you get to the date to the family of Shvat Karbonis Chof Av, does the Gemara have a whole shakvetari if man and kumt this where does this family come from? What's the yichus of Chof Av? The Rebbe brings that it says that one of the things the Gemara says in the get Chamisha also Ba'av is that on Tu Ba'av Tashash Keicha Shel Chama. The heat, the Tkufas Hakayitz, the heat of the sun gets weaker from Tes Vav Ba'av. Tashash Keicha Shel Chama. And that's why the Beis HaMikdash, they would only use wood that was cut before Chof Av, before Tes Vav Av, before Chamisha also Ba'av. Why? Because it's important that the wood shouldn't have any worms. So any wood that grew during when it was still moist, a certain level of moisture, they didn't use that wood. Only the wood that was cut while the sun was still in its full intensity of the heat. So there was no moisture. So that's the wood that they used in order for the. So that's what's the yichus of the ones that are carbon eitzim chof av. Carbon b'chlab, I said before, eitzim b'chlab. It's a donation which is not. You're not going to get a major recognition for this donation that you're giving. No one's going to make a big issue out of it. Not only because it's unnoticeable because of people, but it's only a hechsher mitzvah. It's only a preparation for something else. It's not a chashav ezach. A carbon is a chashav ezach. To build a b'simid is a chashav ezach. Bringing the wood is not a davar chashav. So even objectively, it's not considered a meaningful thing, so to speak. It's something which is needed, but it's not the point. It's not the purpose. That's number one. But it comes to esrim ba'av, tulch esrim ba'av, all those that brought carbonis, they brought eitzim. So there was still a possibility to acquire other eitzim. What if they're going to be this chayv in a carbon? Let's say someone brought the carbon eitzim, someone brought carbon eitzim, shcheidish of, and then he's going to have to make a carbon chatas, and he's going to want to make sure there's going to be wood. He'll be able to go to the trees and be able to cut wood and bring a eitzim. Mashek and Chof Av, the one that has wood Chof Av, he's going to give away his eitzim. These eitzim that he gives away is lost. He's never able to refill them Chof Av. So Chof Av to have wood and to give them away for another yitz carbon, you're giving away something that you can never get back. You're giving away something from yourself that you cannot. It's not something that you're able to. You're giving it the hope to be able to get back somehow. You're giving it and you're going to lose it. It's as the Alter Rebbe said that these are all high levels, maybe, but just it's negate to know what the truth is. He said that the Rebbe Shab said once that what is a Farbrengen? That a Farbrengen is a person makes a cheshbon nefesh. So there's a cheshbon nefesh person makes privately, has to make a din v'cheshbon where he's holding in the v'halter of the vel. Then as people make barav cheshbon nefesh, people discuss as a community where they're holding. So the Rebbe Shab said cheshbon nefesh mi a Farbrengen is meret was sedar zayin, the way things are ideally are supposed to be, the way things theoretically are supposed to be, or ideally are supposed to be. Then there is the way things are could be. The way things are ideally is always the ideal thing. The way things are supposed to be is that a person shouldn't waste a second in his day outside of Eis Hashem. The way things are supposed to be is Shvis Hashem the Negdi Summit. That person constantly is aware of the fact that he's here. The Shamash is kind. Is it possible? I mean, is it practically possible that a person should always be in the ideal state? It's lav dafke ken zayin. It's vas dar zayin, the way things have to be. And then there's the way things the vas ken zayin. Vas ken zayin mean the way things that are practically possible. Practically speaking, as a person, it's inevitable that the Alter Rebbe says even get benini, that it's inevitable that he should have somewhere it's a durchfall. A mensch, a basar adam. It's kind of zayin that a person should be fully conscious every single iota of his day. Shvis Hashem l'neged in the fullest extent. That's via them. But every person has vasas kenzain. A person is able to be, and then there's what's practically possible, and then there is the way things are in actuality. Vas is there's vas darv zayin via kenzain, and vas is the pile. Vas is the pile is always less than way we could be. Every person is always able to be better. That's a person is always able to grow in his avodas Hashem. So al derech here. So why is it important if anyway the way things are supposed to be? Versus darvzain, the way things are ideally supposed to be. We can't achieve there anyway. Why should we speak about it? Why is there a simon Shulchan Aruch that Shvis Hashem l'negli summit is zuhi? That's the way the derech hatzadikim. Why should we mention it? A regular person can't have Shvis Hashem l'negli summit. So there's going to be a part at the time of his year he's going to have to unwind a little bit. The person can't be this the entire time as a shalei hiluchay. The person is going to be aware of the fact that he's always in the Eibish's presence, so he's not going to have he can't so therefore as the Derech and that they're always aware of the fact that they're in the presence of the Eibish, and therefore their behavior and the way they speak is always in behesim with the fact that they're standing in front of the presence of the Eibish. But an average person has to unwind his man. Yeah, it's nicht as other pashat to help them by Zamadrig. So what do we have to say how things are via darvzain? We should speak about what we're able to accomplish. Every person, what's practically feasible for him, and then the way he is, and the person should improve himself. So the person knows the way things are supposed to be, then what he even his improvement to do what he's able to do is also going to be different. If you say someone, Be'etzem is supposed to be Shvis Hashem l'neglisam. The truth is that a person is always supposed to be aware of the Eibush. L'poel, we can't hold it. We don't have a brain, we can't hold it. So the chalapachas do what you could do. That's what we're saying. If a person thinks that the highest level of Hashem is what he's able to do, then his urge to do what he could do, his urge to grow, is also going to be a schwache urge, and the urge is not going to be his Hashem Bechlal. And the person is that the truth is that there is that the Eibishter the person has to be devoted to Haves Hashem in a 100% complete way, and that's the way, and that's a real thing. But says Darvzain, the way things are ideally supposed to be, is a real thing. It's not just Sachen der Luft. That's the steht in Shchonar, wie Hashem the Nagli Summit. Lepoil mehalten is dabei. We're a nusim, a person we don't have the ability to hold at that level. So l'chol hapachas, do whatever you could to be where you're supposed to be. That's the only way a person is going to be in the mode and to be in the mahalach of growing is if he knows that there's a truth where the way things are really supposed to be. Never can there sein. So l'chol hapachas, try to bring yourself as much as you can to get there. That's as I'm about this for now. So what I'm saying is this you see what this type of levels of Avos Yisrael, and Ibrahim to the Eivish, this tzaddikim. So it's not just it's nice stories, nice tales when we get tzaddikim, but it's the way things are. That's the truth of things. The way things are, the way things are in the true sense of things, and that's the truth. But we're not fully in sync with the truth. So the chalapah, every person in his level to try to prove himself, to try to bring himself closer to the truth, which. L'chaim.
Chaim Lebro.
Mabitus.
Just as easy as it is to argue that war is not important. The truth of the matter is the kesher. It's now that you don't have more of it. You need to say that it's probably the most valuable.
Everything that's needed.
Look, I'm saying you could downplay it. Dit is the korban, dit is the mizbeach. The fire is the but then it's not the fire. You don't have a stick. Those families that gave you,
Something couldn't with
that's it. That's nothing about it. It's a very valuable link.
Yeah, for sure. But it's only a link. It's not the.
No, it's a link.
It's the famous thing, the story. It's a story, or the asked Alter Rebbe, what's the uftov? What's a chassid? What's the uftov chassidus, or what's a chassid? The Alter Rebbe said that's a clear Gemara. The Gemara says when you get to the nails, cutting of the nails, that Rasha zirkon nails could damage Ishim Uberes Uchwaks, and then there could be a damage to the fingernails. Yeah, fingernails. Huh? Yeah, Zipper 9. Yeah, Zipper 9. Yeah. No, he meant Chvekes.
This can also damage.
Yeah. That could damage anyone. That's what. But so Rasha zirkon, and the tzaddik is kaver the nails, buries them, and the chassid is serfa. What's the grace of chassidus that is chassid serfa? So there's two things that's mentioned in the Gemara. What's the great piety of the one that's serfa? So the tzaddik kaver is number one, is that the tzaddik that buries it. When a person is burying something, when you bury it, so there's not. It's very unlikely that someone's going to go and to undo to dig out the bear, and then a woman's going to walk in. It's a very unlikely thing. So the tzaddik, which does things according to the way things are, you don't have to worry about far-fetched cases that someone's going to come and is going to dig out the hole, and maybe Ishimber is going to walk in. Tzaddik tut apidin. You don't have to be chesed such a strong far-fetched chash, but there is still such a chash. If you bury the nails in the ground, it's can sein, it's can treffen. It could be a double another base, or someone could come and undo the hole and. Wie gut ist, aber es darf Schasch, also mit allein bei die zu verneien in the das war glaube ich. Gut, das ist noch eine Sache. The pearl minexam is so bekannt ist dann schaffen. Is Apimidas Adin darf nicht rechnen for such a Schasch rochik that someone's going to undo the hole. But a chassid, even when it comes, if someone there's a 1% chance. 1,000% chance. Maybe some person's going to get a hezek, is going to get damaged from leaving the nails. So it should be 100% that no one's going to get hurt. Even the chash, the furthest and the most far-fetched case, he's going to make sure that no one should get hurt. So that's the first thing. A tzaddik is someone that does rifle semansa, rifle darf, and how much it's mechuyev al pidin. To deal with far-fetched cases that maybe that's that level. Obviously, he does. You have to love your fellow Jew. It says, so according to how much I'm mechuyev to do, I'm going to do. According to how much is demanded of me, I'm going to do. But a chassid that goes, for the sake of obviously, it goes beyond the letter of the law. Even if there's going to 5% chance that someone's going to get hurt, or a far-fetched case is going to go for it also. That's number one. That's the einzah. But there's another point that Tesis brings over there. What's the chassid? Why doesn't the tzaddik serve? If you have an option, even a tzaddik, if you have an option of burning it, why should you bury it? It's kind of sign that the hole's going to get undug. Why shouldn't the tzaddik burn it? What's the grace of Maisa? Throw it into the Amalek. I had to get sight. It's a little bit harder to burn the nails. The Amalek, there was fireplaces in the house. They used fire in the ovens. The ovens were these little things that they throw it into the oven, and that's it. What's Hazeh Shver? So Tesis says that it's brought in Yerushalmi. I think what Tesis brings from that if any part of the body that's burnt or that gets nichle, it causes a certain hezek to the person. Part of the goof, some of those grew from the body, which gets nifsad v'nevad legamri, so that it causes a certain hezek. It's not a tangible type of hezek, with a certain hezek that's done when something from the goof is nizah. So Tesis says that tzaddik is not going to go burn a part of his body if it was a definite hezek that this leaving the nails there for sure going to bring a hezek to another person. So then this subtle type of damage that a person gets from burning something of his body is nicht azah hezek, but it's kommt nicht to the type of hezek that the Ishim Uberes is going to have when she walks in the nails. So of course it's demanded of you to burn your nails in order to preserve someone else. But if you're going to bury them, it's also going to take care of the issue. It's a far-fetched case that maybe it's in the. So then I'm not mechuyev to damage, to do something harmful to myself. for a person to burn something of his body is a certain harm that's got a certain subtle level of harm. So that I'm not mechuyev to do if it's gonna just for preserving an issue which is only a sfekset. But a chassid by him to make sure that someone else shouldn't get damaged. That's the priority one. Priority one is that a tzveit is on the shvern get. What's going to be with him? That's secondary. The first thing is that there should be that the same thing. A person when it comes to what's the vaday, what's the certainty, what's the status quo, and then there is an addition. What's added on me. By a regular person, there's his life. His life is that's number one. Then I'm mechuyev to have Avos Yisrael. I'm mechuyev to help someone else. Sometimes Torah even demands a person to be mevada for himself or someone else to give away, which is also pashtus. Why should I give away for myself something which I worked on, something that I put myself into for someone else? What's that? Well, Torah is mechayev. A person has to have Avos Yisrael, maybe. But a chassid, the first thing is what's important. Well, first thing is the true. The author is saying a chassid serfin is by a chassid. Well, the Eibusher wants. That's the first. That's priority number one. That's what's important. What Torah says, that's what's important. That's what's real, and that's what's 100% devote himself to. Then, if Torah gives him a reshus to think about himself, that's nachazak. That's the remember there's it's a little vertical, but they said that one of the it's from the Maggid already. One of the Talmidim of the Maggid, all the Chassidim were described to the Maggid, the Baal Shem Tov. Originally, they weren't Chassidim. They were they came from Valtisha. Then they were described to Chassidus. So there's different stories that are said that they were Talmidim by Gdei Yisrael. That Gdei Yisrael asked them, "What didn't I give you that you gained after by the Maggid?" So he said that one of the I don't remember exactly who, one of the Gdei Yisrael asked one of his Talmidim, "Why did you run to the Maggid become a chassid? What changed?" You learned to. I'm able to teach you Torah too. What's the He says before I came to the Maggid, I be getracht wegen den Eibishter ganze Tag. And after he went to the Maggid, he started thinking about himself, something like that. I don't remember exactly the issue. He started thinking, what's the pshat? So before he went to the Maggid, he had tzveikas. That he existed. That he knew for sure that he existed. That he had no tzveikas that he exists. He was dealing with the whole day whether the Eibishter exists or not. So tracht wegen den Eibishter ganze Tag. That he is here, his needs, that his mitzias is here, and that his mitzias is valuable and important. That was a given. That's a davar bar. The question is, do I have obligations? Is there an Eibusher that could limit me, so to speak? And that's what he thought. When it came to the Maggid, the Lukus became something real. Lukus became the Eibusher. That's a given that he exists. That's for sure he exists. The question is there space for my mitzvah somewhere? Am I able to that's say the nisayness of Chassidim? Am I allowed to say was mit tarnish does that's for sure. What you're allowed to do, then there's no limits at all. What you're not allowed to do is there's his needs. That's for sure that's a given. The Eibusher comes and limits a person. So the limitations, the question is, that's against the status quo. That's against V'ezars. But the Chassidus is, the truth is that there's an Eibusher there and he created the world. The rest of the world doesn't exist. Anything that exists only because, thanks to the fact that the Eibusher creates it. So anything that you do, you have to know if there's any legitimacy inside the Eibusher. I exist. You have a need. Who said the need has to be fulfilled? There has to be every single thing. God's duck, mitzad trade, mitzad olukus. So that's chassid surf, and by chassid, the fact that a person is not allowed to cause damage to someone else. That's a reality. That's real. That's more real than the fact that there's a certain factual hezek that's in the factual hezek steht that you have to prevent. The fact you should prevent someone else from getting harmed. The steht in Torah, so that's a given. That's a reality. That's real. Of them stuck in kashas. If there's space for my mitzvah, is that he has to find the azdok. That's how there says we get the esrim ba'av. That those that brought the eitzim before Chof Av, those about the eitzim rishchaydish of, so they gave taka away something that's valuable, but it's something that they're able to get later. Yenet gezindigt. I'm going to give him my eitzim azdaka, but the pile in the case that he's going to do something wrong, he's also going to be able to find the eitzim because still, since the chama is still betekfei, he'll be able to go out and get eitzim and be able to acquire for himself wood. Again, someone that gives wood Chof Av after Chavishas Rav, there's no eitzim available anymore. So if you have 5 pieces of eitzim or 3 pieces of eitzim, this is it. There's no more eitzim they're able to buy in the. This is the only eitzim they're able to get now for the mizbeach. So you're going to give away your wood to someone else which did a certain chet. You're going to give it over to him, and then it's not something that you're going to be mevater on yourself, and then you'll be able to to get it back, be able to be refilled. You're giving it away, and then you're going to lose it, and you're not going to have anything. You're not going to get it in return. And when you're going to have to use it, when you're going to need it, it's not going to be there. So that level of Avos Yisrael, that's a special level of Avos Yisrael that a Yid is able to go beyond himself legamri for the sake of the good of another Yid. That's the Rebbe speaks Chof Av, this Inyan, that the Gemara is metamea, the Gemara is nispol, from when it comes as this found at such a level of Mesiras Nefesh Avos Yisrael, that's a pelle, that a Yid should have such a level of Avos Yisrael, such a level of Iber Gemekai to another Yid, even on the expense of a real Ruchnis Dekanit, that he's not going to get. It's not that you're going to give yourself away, and then eventually we're going to gain something. You're not going to get anything. That type of level of, just for the sake of doing what's right and being irrigant to another year, that level of Mesiras Nefesh, that's the Rebbe speaks Chof Av, this a word that he said that Bechlal Rabbi used to speak in a shul Shabbos. My father's father was a bacher, used to go to a bisschen rumgedreht over there by the shul. There was a certain tkufa that there was a sniff to Chetzim in Yekaterinoslav. So he used to go there to the Rebbe shul. But the Rebbe used to speak twice, speak on Shabbos morning and also Shal Shuddis in the afternoon. So in the morning, in the afternoon, Shal Shuddis, you would speak Chassidus, Kabbalah, and no one Bechlal even tried to understand what he was saying. But in the morning, so it depends. Sometimes in the morning also he spoke Kabbalah and Chassidus, things that weren't from the Remesh Shabbatai. But sometimes, especially when the Tkufa, when the Gzeira started, and the keeping Yiddish was getting a little bit more difficult, so he made sure to speak. Shabbos morning was the show was more full. There was a lot of young people in shul. Shabbos to Mincha is nicht all in shul. But Shachar and the whole Elam came to shul, so he would speak things that everybody could understand, and he would speak about be me'eded Yidden, and to bring out the mile of a Yid and the mile of being neman to the Eibush that are mitzvahs. That was and speaking a language that people should be able to understand. So there's a word that they repeat that he said in these type of tkufas, one of the speeches Kaviyachol that he gave as a Rav of the city. So he said that this Parshas Egel is also about the Chet Egel. So when you get to the Chet Egel, it says after Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Eibush Ba'ato, Im Tisach Hatasim, if you're going to forgive them, so the pasuk is nicht verstandig. Va'ata im tisach hatasam v'mayin mechenin amshivach asher kasavta. So Rashi explains that the pasuk is missing a couple of words. Rashi says, "Va'ata im tisach hatasam." If you're going to forgive them, mutav, then good. Then I don't have any demand. But v'mayin, if you're not going to forgive them, you're going to punish them. Then mechenin amshivach asher kasavta. Erase me from erase my name from the title. That's what the shaila is. The pasuk itself steht in the pasuk. Va'atem tisach hatasim v'ayin mechilim simcha shekasavta. See, attached a different touch. Attached like this. Moshe Rabbeinu said like this. Va'ata, and now Moshe Rabbeinu is mispal to the Eibush should be meichel and chetaiga and the whole thing. And then he said, im tisach hatasim, whether you're going to forgive them, v'im ayin, whether you're not going to forgive them, v'inishvi mechilim simcha shekasavta. Like the Pasha Sakra. The question is, what's the pshat? So he said that when the Eibush said before the Eibush told Moshe Rabbeinu, herif meni v'chala esam karaga. Stop asking me on when I'm going to mechala zayin ganzen. What's going to be with the shvur that the Eibush promised Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that he's going to zaracha et in his aretz azayis. Zaracha nish haka the Eibush mechala ganzen. So the Eibush told Moshe Rabbeinu that from you I'm going to have a whole new am. Moshe Rabbeinu nish gedin chet ha'egel. V'ashmidim and v'esa is cholegei gadol. Makes it. So they said the whole havamina that the Eibush is mechala yidden to punish yidden for chet ha'egel was only because he's able to build a whole nation from Moshe Rabbeinu. So Moshe Rabbeinu gesagt va'atem tisach hatasim v'ayin mechilim simcha shekasavta. The Rabbi said in the drasha, so to speak, that Moshe Rabbeinu said that he said Shem zech mezay metzias. The fact my metzias caused that there should be a sakadaitach that Yidden should be erased, that a Yid should get a punishment because Moshe Rabbeinu exists. That gave the Nisnasmakim. For them, he couldn't find himself. He was totally. He wanted. That's the Yeker of a Yid. Even a Yid which is Chet Egel. The Yeker of a Yid that when Moshe Rabbeinu had heard that because of the fact that he is here, there could be an asmanga for a Yid to get punished. He couldn't. He couldn't handle this mitzvah. That's the Avos Yisrael on the level of this is Chassidus. The Chassidus is that the primis the kayaker of a yid, and this tzaddikim was some gehalten thereby that they were on the level that they were fully given at Mesiras Nefesh Rayid without thinking about themselves in any way. But that's the idea. The yaker of a yid, the yaker of helping another yid. These are nyanim that yeah, the ene can snem zum Herzen. Kol echad from shir delay. L'chaim.
What then is the difference between test, Chof Aleph?
No, the dates that were brought. It was Chof.
But they wasn't brought in your test?
The Tezvav and Chof. The dates of the Karbanis is Tezvav and Chof.
The covenant.
Yeah, I guess the ones that brought Tezvav, they brought 8 and that lasted for 5 days. And Chof they knew.
So then the 18 for the Chof also.
Were new. There was no.
They were
It's,
cut before test 4.
I understand, but you can't get other ones. Those that brought Tezvav. There's more. There's a shchedish. But once someone passes that sinner, someone started the. Once someone does the breakthrough, brings such a donation, it makes it easier for everybody else already. Yeah, they're also fine. I'm not saying there was no other family yidden. They were all. Once someone introduces such an idea, then it makes it easier for everybody else to
That was from Rabbi. That part, yeah, that Moshe said.
Maybe.
Chaim. Just to bring at this point a little bit different angle of this, but so before the story with the Negelwasser, the stories that bring out that ruchnis or lukus, so these things, mitzvah, this was a real thing. Same way by us, if someone's thirsty, drinking water, it's we feel in our blood that we can't thirsty, and then took away our thirst. But a person, if he's going to wash Negelwasser in this way or that way, we're not margish so much. The it's not real to us. But it's just another story that brings out this point. Just it's one. Also, Rabbi Zechana writes this, that once she also said it over. That once there was a certain zman when they were in Chile, they had pushed there was no food. Sometimes there was they managed to get a couple of pieces of bread, which also went with she's matara in a very descriptively the gaidel hayigia, which was needed in order to get the shtickle bread. You had to schlep in mud, the ganze mahalav zman, the ganze arichis. Well, certain times that they came late or whatever it was, and they weren't able to get the push, or there was times that there was a push, there was no bread. There was sometimes there was push, no food. So there called Shabbos, he tried on Aleph to be able to get something, to be able to eat on Shabbos. There was one Shabbos that she couldn't manage to get anything. The house was empty. And she was very, aragafallen by sich, sitting Friday evening, Friday afternoon, and garnish ishta. No, a tish. I don't know if there was a tish, there was zero, nothing there. And she was very aragafallen. When she said this, she said she's not sure if she's aragafallen because of the hunger or because of Shabbos, but that she said is aragafallen. And I believe it was angetan big the Shabbos, whatever they had. He just took out big the chos lavish big the Shabbos, and he came in and he saw that Rabbi Zechana is sitting as a. So he made her like with a flick with the he said. So the Gemara says yesh lanu tavlin b'Shabbos. He said with a thing yesh lanu tavlin b'Shabbos. You have a Gemara said you have a spice that it's called Shabbos. Famous story with that someone tasted the food of Shabbos, and the Gemara says that yesh lanu tavlin b'Shabbos. The answer, these are the taste of Shabbos. The food of Shabbos tastes different. We have a special spice that we put in that's called Shabbos. That's why the guy tastes the food on Shabbos. So that it's a totally different taste legamri that when you try to make it in his palace, that you can't make. So the Rabbi was saying, we have a Shabbos itself is food. Shabbos itself is the gresta matamim. That was the. But he went through with a smile with a yesh lanu tavlin b'Shabbos. So there's a yidda by him. The fact that the Gemara says Shabbos is tavlin, that was a real thing. A mitzias. So the Eivasher git nicht we can't have material bread, but we have bread, we have tavlin, we have a ruchnistic timing. That was also real to him, so it doesn't manifest itself in a gashmistic way. As he writes also when it came to Beis Nissen, so as a chassid, the Rebbe Rashad, so he wanted to bring with someone, or so he said that there's no one to. He told Rebbe Zechana, I think, when he was, or he was. I remember this, or she's writing it. What he told her when she was with him, or he said what happened in prison. But he said that he has no one to bring with, he has no one to speak to, and he didn't have any ink then to write anything. So we'll have to be mustapik with machshava. We'll have to stay with Elam machshava. He can't speak to anyone, but he's able to. He had a world of machshava. It was a yid which ruchnis behem is a mitzias. So that's a different. I said that once he was walking, there was a. This is a story that the same over Rabbi Yar that he heard from Beryl Kornitzer, that once there was a chassid that was a continuous slav for in Kippur, Rosh Hashanah. So everybody knew, the chassid knew that he's a Mekobel, Tutin Kabbalah. So when they were walking home from Shul, he wanted to try to. She's asking Rabbi Levi, he says in Kabbalah, Rosh Hashanah, the world is this Alphus. till Tkiyas, till the Chatzais, Shoshana, the first day of Chatzais, the world is a farchalish day. The world is as a so that's real. That's the pshat. Everything's fun. The birds are chirping. Everything is regular. He doesn't see any of the leaves are clapping. Out's gate doesn't understand. So like you're saying in Tzarik, we're saying everything's regular. What do you mean the world's Berdifyan Yadayim? It says so. Then they were going by a river, and the Levi said you don't see that the waves and the current. Everything is a different type of strum today. That's in the Chassid Sad that that he has a deeper sense. It's not. But the same way when you get to Bechlal, we're speaking when you get to Chassidus, and the level of Avos Yisrael, the Chassidus speaks about the Mesiras Nefesh and Bittul. So a person can think these are what's the same thing. Bechlal, Ruchnis Bechlal is not a Metzias by us altogether. What's real to us is the fact that we're thirsty. Drinking water is real. Other things are real, but Shoshana, the fact that there's the Aliyah Samachos or Shoshana, the world is not functioning normally. That's not real to us. When we're not feeling well, we have a little virus. That's when the Sekeret Tzachim will enter. But that the Rosh Hashanah B'nai, the world's farchalish, that is not. We're not sensitive. We're not sensitive to ruchnistic things. But the same thing we speak about. Chassidus speaks about levels of Avos Yisrael and a certain level of bittul and vegas to the Eibusha. That's so. There's many inyanim, many ideas of Chassidus that the nature of the ideas are inyanim which are higher than our hasagis, higher than our musagim. But we learn about them. These are things that are real. There are things that are real. And there's Yidden that they were in touch with these. This was reality for them. They were in touch with them. It's not stam. You say the person can speak about the Indian of Avos Yisrael that a person is Mesiras Nefesh. We looked yesterday in Tanya that Avos Yisrael biz mitzia nefesh. Avos Yisrael until the Hapishchonar Chayecha Kaidman, that someone else's matzav, you should care about it and should gain business dama tamtzis. If no one ever experienced it in the world, it doesn't have any meaning. There's a Yid that you hear that it was lived. A person that this is a real thing. The fact that what's the real mahus of a Yid is someone that is fully dedicated to someone else without having any consideration of himself. This is something that was, if it was experienced in the world, it was experienced. It's able to have an effect on us. The same way when we hear that there was a Yid that Behim Netil Sedayim was more real than drinking water, it will cause us to have as a hirus. It's not that we can't sense. It can't be real to us until Sedayim like Behim was real. But if the story that happened and it played itself out in this Elam Hazard, there was a Yid that by him Ruchnis is a Metzias, and that was a visible thing that these inyanim which are higher than our asagas, this was his reality that has an effect, that has a certain relation that a person should be a little bit more sensitive to these type of things. That's by a person's own avodah themselves. There are certain things a person is davening when it comes to learning. There's certain things that a person does, like the Rebbe teaches in a Maimer that the Gemara says someone that says Shmu Zuna, Shmu Zu Einena is Nishkin Kutazach. What does it mean Shmu Zuna? Simple means he says this blood Gemara is the Eibishter good gesagt. He did a good job. Here it's not the Eibishter is not doing a good job. That's a statement Shazazach. The Rebbe teaches in Maimer Shmu Zuna means a person, one Gemara that a person learns, he feels that it gives him, it enriches his life. A person lets it give him Shver in Shel Tachtas. He feels a certain grabkeit or a certain aksham. He learns a Maimer, so it elevates him. So it's one thing a person learns, then he feels that this something uvgeheben. He learned to shtikol Gemara, he learned to shtikol Maimer, shtikol Tanya, and he feels that it made a difference in his day. He feels that he was elevated. There's certain times he learning Chassidus or that doesn't see that it has any effect on him. It doesn't have any imprint on him. That's Shmu Zu'enino. He doesn't see that he's going to learn this Maimer today. He wakes up in the morning, he's learning Maimer. It's not going to affect him in any way. He doesn't see that it has an effect. So the truth is that's the sort of certain things that we're sensitive. It's real to us that they have an effect. We're sensitive to them. Person could learn a Maimer, he feels that it elevated him. Then there are certain things that are beyond our sense. Stamaz is learning a Maimer Chassidus, even though you don't feel that you don't see the change that it's going to affect in you. But this is the same thing that you have. There's the truth is that Chassidus is connecting a person to the truth of the Eibusha, which is not necessarily, it's beyond our hargasha. Same way we don't have a sense, we don't feel how the realness of Metilas Yadayim, or we don't sense the taste, we can't taste the spice of Shabbos, but it's real, even though we can't taste it. Yerushalmi says there's a tavlin with Shabbos Shmai. Gemara says there's a tavlin Shabbos, so there's a tavlin. Shabbos is there's the element of spice to Shabbos, whether we can taste it or not. We're limited people with limited senses. That's so the same thing when it comes to what's demanded from a person is kviyasitim, is things, not to limit things based on how we sense it and how we experience it, but to know that the end of learning Torah is a valuable thing in itself. That's l'chaim.
It's a bittersweet for Farbrengen because I was supposed to be in Almatach.
Are you supposed to go on the plane?
Yeah. So I was going. So I think to myself, could we make a proper chana? That was my first thought. And I think to myself, but there's so many people who didn't go, not just me. So okay, so it could be that everyone's different chesed, right? Everyone has a different chesed for every person, right? But so I don't have a good answer, right? But it was it was a moment where I was made to think. You try and do something which is good, right? Person wants to do something which is good, and it doesn't work out. So it doesn't mean the Eibishter wants you to try harder. It doesn't mean that it's not your shlichus. I don't have the right answer. There were people who were actually they found a way that they went at it. Yeah. It could be they didn't try hard enough, or it could be it's not it wasn't supposed to happen. I'm not sure what the right answer is, but whichever way it is, the lesson for me was both ways. When you really try hard, the Abishah makes it happen. And if it's supposed to happen, it'll happen. On the other hand, if there's something good in Ruchnis that a person wants to accomplish, right? So sometimes, even if it's a good thing, you have to be zeicha. It's not always a pleasure that it's a good thing. The Abishah will make it happen, but the question is through who, right? There's going to be Chassidim in Almaty on the Leiblik Sheretz. Who's going to be? That depends who's zeicha, right? So the lesson I took from it is that whether it's because of a chesar, whether it's because it just happens to be that for whatever reason it's not meant to happen. But the lesson is to strengthen yourself and make myself and Muchim and Kedusha and things like that. And I almost said to myself, okay, next year I'll be zeicha. I once heard there was a person who he didn't take Tisha B'Av seriously. It was one of those things he never liked. So one year he decided he's going to be this year he's going to do his dafs tonight. The whole sugya in Maseches Gittin, the whole sugya in Yerushalmi, the whole Eicha Rabbi,
The rock under his head when he's going to sleep.
the whole 9 yards. Really took it very. An earnest person. That's not Jacob. And he fasted. And he learned Eicha with the Mefarshim, and he used the kiddush that has a beard. The whole thing. He really preached a Tisha B'Av like. And when he broke his fast, he said that Chazi Hashem, next year I should be zeich to Azat Tisha B'Av. So we should be zeich to see a blivik when he was.
You also named that for the lady.
Right. Yeah, I was looking very much forward to this whole thing.
Yes, because of my mom.
Oh, my birthday. I'll say over one word. I'm going to my birthday. There's a time that I ever coached a blivik. Let me. And I'll say Rabbi Leivik's word, then I'll say the Rebbe basically the Leivik is Mitzayin to in Chitas nowadays. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya somewhere that the Giluyim of loss of love are totally my same of the same.
Yeah.
Calls not Meshach Hagolos. The Leivik is Mitzayin to Gersa Kodesh Shimi Yud Beis, I think it is.